Final score at Villa Park, Aston Villa 4, Celtic 2, and Celtic close out their 8th match day of this season's Champions League with that, I suppose, a disappointing defeat, but it was an interesting night at Villa Park for a variety of reasons. This is Tino with the Final Whistle Show, joined here by Greg. Greg, what's your take on all things last night?
Wow, what a roller coaster! What a match, particularly the first half. To be honest, after 5 minutes, I thought it was Dortmund Part 2 and I was ready for turning my TV off. But to show the character, maturity, to quote Brendan Rodgers, resilience of the team to come back from that nightmare start was incredible, because it was an absolute cauldron last night, the atmosphere. And after 5 minutes, you could see Callum McGregor bringing the team in round about him, trying to galvanise it. And I really was worried. But to go in at half-time 2-2, you've got to commend the players massively, because you were very close to being an end of a hiding last night. And I thought we started well enough, but just the 2 early goals are absolute killers. But as I say, to galvanise, to get back to half-time and 2-2 and put yourself in the cusp of going and possibly trying to win the game, which we'll cover later in the show. But it was a pretty incredible night and a pretty incredible game. As I say, particularly the first half was... I phoned my mate Lenny back home, who you know as well, Tino, and I actually said I don't even know what just happened in that first half. It was absolutely incredible. So quite a spectacle.
Do you think it's a further sign of this, let's call it this newfound maturity of Celtic in Europe? That's a word that Brendan Rodgers is using, Callum McGregor's using, and various pundits. And it's a maturity that Celtic had to find after Dortmund. We keep referring back to that game, but it's important to do so because it was a real... lesson for Celtic. It was a painful lesson, but it was an important one. And I think, as we've covered, as everyone's covered, Celtic responded really well at Atalanta. But there's no doubt, if you felt after 5 minutes that it was going to be another Dortmund, you can bet your bottom dollar the players felt it, because most of them had been there before. They'd been, a couple of goals down, early bells, and they must have been fearing the worst. So at that point, and to Callum McGregor's credit in particular, you've got to hand it to them for...
Yep.
having the character to get back in the game, because it looked at that point we could have been in for a hiding.
Sorry, Tino, just cut off there, but yeah, enormous credit for getting back in the game. I think a lot of those players have got, scar tissue there from the Dortmund game. There's a number of them that played in that game, and you must be thinking their heads are completely scrambled at that point. And yeah, he had a massive role to play last night. I thought there was 2 huge moments in the first half that allowed us to get back in the game. The Callum McGregor galvanising the team, you seem trusty, I think, if you're watching TV. Looked a bit like a rabbit caught in the headlights.
Yeah.
And you can just see McGregor bringing him in. There was also, see when Matty Cash got injured, I thought that changed the game as well. He was getting a lot of joy down the right-hand side, but it was almost just a wee lull in proceedings, allowed the players to kind of go and have a chat with Brendan Rodgers. Rodgers alluded to that in his post-match press conference as well, that he had a chance to speak to the players and just calm them down. Keep on doing what you're doing, keep on trusting the process, keep on playing the football that we want to play. So I thought that was 2 massive moments that kind of allowed us to get back in the game. And even though it was such a fraught start, even the first minute, we looked quite comfortable and we kept on trying to play through the press and stuff. So, yeah, really, you have to give a lot of credit to the players, as I say.
You're absolutely right. Those moments are so important. Sometimes you don't get the opportunity because it's fast-paced, it's high-tempo football. I agree, the Matty Cash moment, I thought at the time it might have been something, and it was certainly in our favour. I don't wish the guy any ill will injury-wise, but it was in our favour because he was on a very good game. And out with anything else, it just allowed us to breathe. And I think smart teams will use that opportunity to get instructions to their players and just make adjustments, because we had to almost just press reset and start the game again. And you could see as the half wore on, Celtic get more and more confident, more and more on the ball. And yeah, as I say, it's just a reflection on where the side are at this moment in time. What about Callum McGregor? How important was it for him to once again step up on a big European night? He played his part again, didn't he?
He massively did, didn't he? I was laughing at the bit. Was it the second half and he grabs Zhang, or the first half, and he actually puts him in the position that he wants him in? And just stuff like that. It's not just his play on the ball. We alluded to this last week, talking about the young boys game and in the pre-match, and I said I think Callum McGregor is the main guy for us. And again, in Europe, he plays such a pivotal role for us, keeps everybody galvanised, keeps everybody together, and also his football was very impressive last night as well. As I say, we didn't look panicked. I was panicking. I think most other Celtic supporters were panicking, but the team looked quite relaxed. we just kept on doing our thing. And I think that is massively to do with Callum McGregor and the role he plays overall within the team.
Yeah, his experience is so important. Greg, as always, we've got some brilliant comments coming in, and it's great to see a lot of the usual guys on board. We've got Gio, Tommy Dawson, Pat McLaughlin, Gypsy King, San Fran, Vincy, various others here, and some great comments coming through. I'm just going to highlight Gio's first of all. He said it's amazing to see the variance in Celtic fans' opinions. So on reflection, he's going to be positive. I'm all for that, Gio. That's generally where I'm at this moment in time. But there are so many. I thought there was some real overreactions at times last night. There was some kind of strange opinions coming through for a variety of reasons, but that's the way it goes. Just a reminder, if you do want to join us in the chat, if you want to ask any questions or send any comments for myself and Greg, you do need to be a channel member. There's a link to do so in the show notes if you want to get on board with this one. Greg, as Gio's saying there's so many different opinions, some up, some down, some good, some bad. What was your general feel? We're obviously going to cut through the various action points and all that kind of stuff, but end result 4-2, as we know. Did you feel we could have done better, done as well as we could given the squad? What was your thoughts?
I thought it was point twofold here. I thought, first of all, I cut quite a frustrated figure last night and even this morning, and after being 2-0 down after 5 minutes, I was just wanting damage limitation, to be honest. But at the end of the game, I was actually frustrated. The reasons for that, I think, once we got to 2-2, I'm thinking, kick on now. They were rattled. I thought their home fans were very, very quiet. And I thought we had an opportunity to go and take the game to them. But I think because we'd given so much mentally, emotionally and physically in the first half, I thought a lot of the players were spent by the hour mark and it stopped us kicking on. If you look at the players we're missing, Vickers, Kyogo, Maeda, these players are massive. And what we had on the pitch and what we were bringing onto the pitch just wasn't enough at that level. And I know you're going to hate this, Tino. I've already texted you, warn you. But Yang, for me, was at that level just nowhere near good enough. And I don't like slaughtering players, but I felt you're almost a man down over on that side. And I think that experiment might be over now. But if we talk about this show a lot, we want to go to the next level. Last night, we were on the cusp of beating a really, really good Villa side. I thought they were excellent, especially going forward. The guy, Brendan Rodgers, is exceptional, an absolute exceptional talent. And I thought some of the play going forward was very slick, very clever. But I felt we were competing. But then when we went to our bench, we had nothing really to bring on, which was really disappointing. So I'm frustrated in that. Why is the signing not delayed? He could have come on and offered something. Why is the Kyogo signing not delayed? He could have offered something because the drop-off is huge. All respect to Cummins and other guys that came on the pitch. And a lot of people go, why are you saying that though? Because Idah scored 2 goals. Idah done brilliant, but it was absolutely burst after the hour mark. So the drop-off of what we had to come in, even though we were still in the game at 3-2, I didn't really see us scoring, if I'm honest, which is a shame because I said to the boys last night, the Leipzig performance and starting 11, I think we take something at Villa last night, at least a point, if not all 3, and they're a good side.
Yeah, they're a very decent side, but you're absolutely right. You cannot compete at Champions League level with just 11 decent players, and I think there is no doubt. I mean, Celtic's squad last night was 4 players down from the team that played against Young Boys. Kyogo, we know, is gone. Dyson Maeda suspended. Carter Vickers injured. Alex Bailly allowed to leave early, to your point. What we usually do, Greg, is we leave Yang Watch till a bit later on in the show, but let's do it now. Couple of messages in my direction on the likes of Twitter last night, and all good with that. Talking about the Yang experiment and all that stuff. I've got to be completely honest, he was well out his depth last night. Well out his depth. And I do think he's a player that's got something to offer, but he's been below par domestically while showing flashes. This was streets above him. Listen, obviously, I'm hopeful that he kicks on and stuff, but he just looked woefully short last night. There was a couple of times actually in the first half where Celtic's high press came off. We ended up with the ball in dangerous positions, one in particular with Yang. He just didn't have the confidence to do anything positive with it. I think he ended up passing it out the park, coming out for a by kick. And on that note, I suppose if Celtic want to kick on, if the manager wants to kick on and we as a fan base want to kick on, there needs to be some ruthless calls at different times. And that's why, we're continuing to improve from a position of strength. We're in a very good position domestically, but we're making progress in Europe, and we'll catch that in a more rounded chat later on in this episode. And the guy who was really good last week might not be the guy that plays next week. That's how it goes at Celtic, and you've got to be continually improving. We've just spent the best part of £8 million on a winger. in the shape of Jota, and that's a brilliant move. We're bringing Tierney back, and that won't be a cheap move in terms of his wages and stuff. There's talk about bidding, in excess of 7-8 million for another winger from Denmark. Kvistgaarden's been quoted at 13-14 million. Celtic are paying big bucks to bring in high quality, and whatever your base level is at this moment in time, you must always be looking to nudge it up and nudge it up again. And I think at this point, Yang doesn't feature in that. Palma doesn't feature in that. You could argue if any of the young boys are going to come through. We'll get to that later on, because I found that really interesting, actually, that they featured Dane Murray and Daniel Cummins. But periphery players, Mike Nawrocki, Odin Thiago Holm, who's away out on loan, all these guys who have been floating around the periphery, it might just be time to move them on and create a situation where Brendan Rodgers looks at his bench and he might be looking to replace one £7 million player with another £8 million player, or a £10 million striker with another of the same level. And I think the reality is that Yang doesn't feature in that at this moment in time, and it'd probably be quite a dramatic turnaround now for him to get back on track. So, and that's all right. I'm happy enough to concede that. I've been a big supporter. Go on.
I was going to say you're conceding that, Tino.
Reluctantly. But I'll always back anyone in a Celtic shirt, and it's not blind faith in Yang. I do see something in him. He's the kind of guy that could maybe either go out on loan or go elsewhere and do really, really well for himself. But it seems that he's struggling to deal with the magnitude of a move to a club like Celtic. So that's my current position on Yang. I'm not completely off the bus, but I'm hanging off the back of it, to be honest with you. Let's get back to the game stuff. So, 2-0 down. We don't need to go over the goals. No. Good goals from a Villa point of view, frustrating goals from a Celtic point of view, particularly the second one. Because you can lose an early goal in any game of football. That can happen. But at that point, you need to knuckle down for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, weather the storm, and get back in. To lose a second was criminal. And again, it seemed our own doing, playing it out from the back. I don't mind playing it out from the back, but you've got to do it better. Kasper Schmeichel could have done better. And before and it does take a nick off scales. If it doesn't take that nick, your goalie's maybe making the save. But it is what it is, and you're 2-0 down and you're under serious pressure. Fast forward a bit, we spoke about the break and play for Matty Cash and a couple of other moments. But Adam Idah then really, really steps up for Celtic. I thought both goals were really good, actually. But let's talk about the first one. Dare I say, Yang's heavily involved in the move. Yang brings it inside, though, and it's Greg Taylor, actually, who's pivotal to it. He's doing the whole third-man running thing. He keeps his run going down the left-hand side, and is it Hatate that finds him, I think? And all Taylor can do, and all you want him to do, is get a low and hard ball across the face of the goal. He does that. It takes a nick off John McGinn, no less. But the agility and the ability of Adam Idah to adjust, it was pure instinct. You don't get anything. That comes you at a fraction of a second. It was pure instinct. And I was so pleased for him at that point. You didn't know at that point you were even going to get a second. But at that point, you just thought, do you know what? It's exactly what he needs. A Champions League goal back down south. But I actually catapulted Celtic onto bigger things in that half. Really important goal. Yeah,
it was. And you said it yourself. They're so happy for Idah. You could see how happy he was with the goal last week that he was heavily involved in. He obviously didn't get it put against his name, but last night he's done so well to adjust to the position it's at, because John McGinn does get quite a heavy deflection on it, and it kind of lands almost kind of chest height at him, and he has to adjust and get his shot away. I thought he'd done really well. The move itself is excellent. The pass by Hatate is very good as well, and as you say, Greg Taylor just puts the ball across. It takes that deflection, but it's a great finish, and I was over the moon for him. I thought he had a really good night last night. I think Rodgers said in his press conference today, though, he alluded to the fact he's still not fit yet. He's still not at that level they want him to be at. And I thought that you kind of seen that last night, that he was kind of bullying the centre halves. He was throwing his weight about, and he held the ball up very well. I thought he did look sharper, but I think there's still levels for him to go to reach where Brendan Rodgers wants him to be at. But he took his goal really well, and it was an excellent build-up. It was really well worked.
Yeah, it was that. And I suppose in the similar way to Villa getting their 2 goals in quick succession, Celtic go and follow suit. And I think they were rocked by the first goal. I don't think they expected it. You might have seen the unique angle that was doing the rounds today. And actually the body language of a number of the Villa players was really low and slumped. You might have heard during the game various stats about in the Premier League, they concede a lot of goals. They're a good side. They're a wee bit short of where they were last year, but they're around about 7th or 8th. Not a million miles from top 4. But they do concede goals. However, they hadn't conceded any at Villa Park in the Champions League this season. So that was something for them to get used to. And while they're trying to get used to it, Celtic score what is a brilliant and brilliantly worked second goal. Lots of guys involved. Nicholas Kuhn doing his thing down the right-hand side. It eventually makes its way back through Hatate to Callum McGregor. He clips it into Arnie Engels, and you've got to give real credit for the invention, you know, in the initiative from Engels with the back heel flick. Rio Hatate's held his run perfectly. Puts what we call it, the corridor of uncertainty. Puts it across there where it was begging for Idah to finish it. But it's not just a tapping on the deck. He knows the goalie's getting across and he has to lift it. And he smashes it high into the net against World Cup winning goalkeeper Emi Martinez. And what a buzz for Adam Idah and what a lift for him.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I'm so glad you said it. The finish isn't easy because the goalkeeper's diving down at his feet. So he can only put it in that one area. So it's actually a really clever finish considering people go, well, it's only 6-7 yards out. It's the only place he can put it. The build-up's excellent. I was kind of screaming at the TV for Kuhn to kind of go at his man on that side and drive at him, but he kind of checks back and interplays lovely. The wee flip round the corner from Engels is wonderful. It's a really, really smart goal. And at that point, they are rocking. And you can see Unai Emery's kind of trying to calm his players down. He's trying to calm everything down. But I thought at that point, I'm thinking to myself, getting 2-1 at half-time, you're back in the game. But to be 2-2 going towards half-time, and have them against the ropes after where we were in the first 5 minutes was just incredible. It was an incredible half of football, but I couldn't be happier for Adam Idah, and I really hope he kicks on now because ultimately he's the only striker we've got currently, unless you're looking at some of the periphery players.
Yeah. So we need him to be confident, and he will be. In the comment you can see on screen from San Fran Celtic saying the big Idah must be walking on air today. Love it. And you've seen potentially seen his interview earlier on. He enjoyed the moment. He's quite a calm and measured kind of guy, isn't he? Keeps it low key during his interviews, but strikers just confidence oozes out strikers when they're scoring goals. That's the bottom line. And he was under so much pressure. Remember the headlines just a few games ago, he's not scored in 11 or 12 or whatever it might be. He's now gone and proven that he can score on the big stage. And I know he never scored that goal against Young Boys. You know, there's no debating that, but he played a big part. And he influenced that goal, let's call it that, against Young Boys. And Adam Idah, dress it up whatever way you want. He's played his part in some huge moments for Celtic in the last 12 months. For me, he's the big game player, the big environment player. And I think he showed that again against Villa last night. What do you think, though, about the striking berth in general then? Because it's rumoured that we're in for Kvistgarden and there's potentially bids going in, you know, upwards of 12 million for a guy like that. Is he now the first choice striker, or do you think the manager might still be looking for someone to come in to, let's call it, replace Kyogo and once again be first choice?
The couple of points there, I would think, first and foremost, I'm kind of shocked that if you sell Kyogo, there's not a replacement. And I know it's not as straightforward as that. I know it isn't. But if they knew Kyogo was wanting to leave a couple of months ago and they kind of saw it happening in January, why is there not somebody coming in right in the back end of that? We've now got to Monday night, sitting here on Thursday with one recognised striker, really. I know you can play Maida there, but I'm the same as you. I don't really like it. I'd rather he played in the wing. Why is somebody not in the door already? I'm a bit surprised at that, and I know it's not as straightforward as that, but I think that's where you alluded to. Some Celtic fans are disappointed or moaning. I can see the frustration that if you sell Kyogo, and you know how much I loved Kyogo and how important he was to that side, you have to bring somebody in, and whether he's your number one or two, it doesn't really matter. Celtic need two top form strikers with the amount of games we play and the way we play. You need two strikers in there. You know, heaven help us if Idah gets injured, you're left with nothing really. So you really need to bring somebody else in, whether they're going to be a replacement, whether you're going to be the number two striker. You need to bring somebody in as a matter of urgency within this window. I just can't really get my head around it, if I'm honest. I was devastated to see Kyogo leave, but you need to bring in a striker without doubt. And the only thing I would say just quickly is I wonder if Idah's taken a lift from, I know this sounds a bit silly, but with Kyogo leaving, he is now the number one player, and that's given him the confidence to go on and show that he's the number one Celtic centre forward. Yeah,
do you know, there's so much going on there, and I just hope the club haven't gambled on having someone lined up striker-wise and it doesn't work out. Transfers can often fall apart at the 11th hour, and I hope we don't end up in a situation where all we're left with is Adam Idah, Johnny Kenny and Daniel Cummins. With every respect to those last two lads there, we need much better than that. We're about to go in against Real Madrid or Bayern Munich, two of the biggest names in European football, potentially with one senior striker, if you want to call it that. And Adam Idah, I think, is 23 or 24, and he's your he's your main man. It's a tall order. There's some really good and interesting comments coming in, Greg. So we're half time, we're two each. We're absolutely flying, and all the credit to Adam Idah for doing so. There's a variety of comments, some interesting ones about it. First of all, Tommy Dawson saying if the game had lasted 90 minutes, Tino would only have lost 3-2. I've got to love that optimism. I've got to enjoy that, and good to hear from Tommy.
I can see the point though in terms of the fourth goal's almost slightly irrelevant. I mean, it's a mistake, but it is irrelevant, to be honest.
It's kind of incidental.
Yeah.
San Fran says we're the only team to score at Villa Park, and he's absolutely right. There's various comments about the. Let me get to it. The fact that Brendan Rodgers might have been sending out a message by playing guys like Murray. I tell you what we'll do. Let's park the two young kids to the latter part, because they come on at the end, and I want to just kind of try and catch it in some sort of order, Greg. We're all over the shop here, or at least I am. So, yeah, but various comments coming in, and some are really interesting. I just want to get back to that. But we get to half-time, tails are up, boys are feeling good about themselves, and I just think the character is the big thing, because we're down there, you're up against some real quality players. You mentioned Morgan Rodgers. I'm no expert, but I highlighted him before the game because I've seen enough of him this season. I've seen them playing against Man City, and he was frightening. He's a really talented player. He obviously goes on to get his hat-trick on the night, but there's no debating his qualities. You've then got guys like Ollie Watkins, £30 million striker, England international, Leon Bailey. You've got the World Cup winning goalkeeper. He cost them 17 million. John McGinn comes off the bench. He doesn't even start, and we know what qualities John McGinn can offer. Digne at left back, he was 30 million from Everton. They've got quality all across the board, but that's a game actually you could argue that they should have been more motivated than us, given that they were very generally on the cusp of top 8. It was going to be a real miracle for Celtic to make top 8, but they had a real desire. It wasn't any sort of dead rubber for them. They were going at it hell for leather, whereas we had our injury worries, and we knew we'd already qualified and a few things like that. So again, Greg, it does say a lot about the whole team, and I include the stand-in players like that. We've highlighted that Yang wasn't at his best, and other guys have had to plug the gap. Scales, he's come back in, for example, and had some moments in the game, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of character within this dressing room.
Sorry, Tino, just broke off a wee bit there. Yeah, no, I think the sorry, on you go.
I was just saying I was making a stunning point, an absolute stunning point, and you must have missed it.
No, I heard most of it, don't worry. No, I think you have to look at it. I think we discussed this just before we came on, that Aston Villa are a top side. So much quality, as you've mentioned, across the park. For us to have that kind of makeshift team, and it was a makeshift back four without Vickers, who I thought we missed massively last night. And having stand-in players there, and with not a lot of quality coming off the bench, with the utmost respect, to play against a side like that, and they were well and truly in a game. Yes, they probably deserved to win if you look at it overall in terms of chances, but I think they got a real fright, especially it was at 2-2, and that's where my frustration lies this morning. And I wouldn't say it's moaning, but I'm frustrated, and there was a chance there at 2-2 to go and get the goal, and I think if we go 3-2, the least we're leaving with is a point. Now, I'm not even going to go into the kind of stuff I've read today about if we get one more point, we wouldn't have had this horrendous draw. It was so fluid last night, it was changing every 10 minutes. So I don't think you can look at it like that. I just think it's an opportunity missed just with what we had in the pitch. And everybody gave their all, but there was a real drop-off in certain areas, especially when we had to look at our bench.
Yeah, and there's no doubt. I mean, what a task. There's guys such as Palmer coming on. Palmer barely plays for Celtic nowadays. You're bringing him on against Villa at Villa Park. Cummins and Murray as well, that we've spoken of. Let's get to the goal zone in order. So, yeah, 2 each are absolutely in the game, but we lose. Quite a frustrating goal for me at 3-2 because Celtic were actually in the ascendancy. We were pressing them high up, in and around their box. I have to admire at times how well Villa played out of the high press. I thought they were very clever at it, and it was good to watch if you're a Villa fan, I suppose. And during one of those spells, eventually the ball ends up in the midfield area in Villa's half. And for some reason, and I'm still not sure why, Liam Scales is pressing really, really high up the park. I can't fault him for enthusiasm there. Can't fault his enthusiasm, but I'm not sure why he was there. And actually, see when he realised he wasn't going to win the ball, take a yellow. Take the guy out, take the yellow, and let your midfielders get back on track, because everybody including Alistair Johnston and Callum McGregor at that point, were wrong side of the ball. And I think it's eventually John McGinn out-muscles Arne Engels, and before you know it, Villa were 2-on-1. At that point, it felt a wee bit schoolboy football, didn't it? Like all of you had charged up trying to get the goal, for the school team, and you've left the big gap at the back. And I don't know, it was a frustrating goal to lose.
It's such a frustrating goal to lose. You mentioned the Scales getting caught high up the pitch. He does. You can look at it from a Villa point of view, it's a very good goal. But from our point of view, you said that Scales take the yellow card, he gets out-muscled. But Arne Engels has to take the yellow card on John McGinn. And John McGinn's so good at it. We've seen it so many times. He gets his backside in the way, he swivels in the turn, and then we're in real bother. But Engels, for me, has to take the yellow card. I thought he had a good game last night, but I thought that was very naive, not just wiping him out there. Tactical foul, take your yellow and drop back in. It's a really frustrating goal to lose for us.
It is, and it was a point when you were really competing. You could have seen Celtic be the one to get the goal. As you say, the crowd plays a huge part in a night like tonight, and the home fans were getting quieter and quieter, whereas Celtic's tails were up and we were pressing and we looked confident. There was one point, I can't remember at what stage in the game it was, and I can't remember who's highlighted it here in the comments. I'll try and find it in a second. But it was a pass that Nicholas Kuhn made with the outside of his left boot round the corner. I think it was either at 3-2 or at 2 each. Did it put Yang in? Was it the one where Yang fell? It might have been. But he's just got real qualities, Nicholas Kuhn. I thought he was quiet again in general last night, but he had moments. He had moments the game. And if we can get Nicholas Kuhn to a level, and he's still developing, he'll be keen to kick on, but I don't think he's ready just yet. He's still developing. But if we can get a level where you're getting 90-minute performances against the Villas and the Leipzigs and all that stuff, there could be something special there. But as I say, Villa have been ruthless on that occasion. It's Ollie Watkins, as I mentioned. He's an England international striker. He's been targeted by Arsenal on a 60 or 70 million pound move. He's absolutely top drawer. Did you see a bit of arrogance from him on the night at different moments?
I thought Ollie Watkins was excellent last night. I thought he was very, very good. Just mentioning him there, and he's subject to the Arsenal bid as well, which came in last night or yesterday. I thought he gave Trusty a thorough examination. I thought Trusty did okay at times, but yeah, they had real quality going forward, very, very fast, very dynamic. And I thought Trusty stood up for that for the most part. But yeah, you can't argue that their quality in terms of just what they had. The front four, when I looked at it again this morning, I watched the highlights, so dynamic, but so strong as well. Physically, very, very strong all over the park. And even if you look at their right-hand side, they put the guy Bailey against Greg Taylor. There was a huge mismatch there, just with strength, power and pace alone. So we were really up against it, and with respect to that, Tino.
Yeah, and there's no harm to Greg Taylor. Leon Bailey cost €32 million from Leverkusen. He's a very talented guy, and I think most left-backs would struggle with him. It was interesting. I asked about the arrogance of Ollie Watkins. The kind of dinked finish he had in the first half where Alistair Johnston cleared it off the line. I thought he was trying to be cute. I thought he was kind of taking the piss, to be honest with you. And I thought he looked a bit cocky when he scored his goal. And I wasn't disappointed to see him miss his penalty, put it that way. And we'll catch the penalty as well in just a second. But you've got a situation, one of the guys in our group chat highlighted the fact that time after time, and the second half particularly, the ball ended up at Emi Martinez and we were drawing Celtic in. And all of a sudden, he just shelled it and found Ollie Watkins one-on-one with Austin Trusty. It was a really interesting matchup. And Neil Lennon, not your Lenny, the other Lenny, highlighted it on the commentary. I think Neil Lennon's really good in the punditry, by the way. I'm
so glad you said that, Tino. I had it in my notes and it was a total side. So I'm really glad you've read my mind. I thought he was excellent last night. I thought he came across really fair, really knowledgeable. He gets a bit of a hard time up here. But I thought as a pundit, I always really like listening to him. Another guy, I love, Martin O'Neill, I thought was brilliant back in the studio. So that was just a wee side there that I'm glad you mentioned.
Yeah, and it makes it enjoyable. I think that's a key part of watching football when you've got someone who knows their stuff. And Lenny does. You can argue where he's at right now in terms of his coaching career, but he's a guy who knows football and he's played at the top level and been around, and it's very enjoyable to listen to, very knowledgeable. But he was talking about it. He highlighted that battle between Trusty and Watkins, and it was almost at one point he was actually talking about it, and once again it ended up one-on-one. And as I said, the goalie kept finding him, and it was a good battle. And I actually thought for the most part Trusty handled it well. I thought he showed his strength and his pace, and I thought he dealt very well with what is a really top striker. Where he came undone was the penalty. And I'd be really keen to hear your thoughts, because there's a variety of opinions here. I'll maybe share some on the screen. Some guys think it was a stone waller, some think it really was. And like me, some guys don't think it was a penalty at all. I think there's been barely any contact. The most contact is with the ball. It just seems to me nowadays, particularly in Europe, you just need to make any sort of contact and it's a foul. But when did football become a point of, as soon as you go boot to boot or knee to knee or whatever, it's just automatically a penalty? I think it's really troubling the way it's going in terms of what's deemed a penalty nowadays. It was so light for me.
Sorry, Tino, the reception here is just kind of, I'm struggling with it, but I heard you talking about the penalty.
Go for it.
I don't think it is a penalty. However, I don't know why he goes to ground and give the referee that decision. And I just think in the Champions League, the way it is at the moment, it was never getting overturned. I just didn't think it was. The way they seem to referee it at the moment in the Champions League, things like that just get given. I actually thought it was a good tackle. But again, why go to ground? Because he was touched tight at the time. I actually thought he'd got his body in a good position. And you can argue there's some contact there in the leg. It's very minimal. And then he kind of hooks it back round. So I just, when I seen it, I just thought that's not going to go overturned. And that's the kind of thing in Europe that gets given all the time. And there was a question of why he's going to ground. But maybe justice is done in terms of the actual penalty itself and Ollie Watkins missing it. And it gives us a kind of, it gives us a bit of relief that way.
Yeah, I actually thought it was going to go to VAR and I thought we would have got away with it. I really thought it was so light, but there's this whole thing, is it a clear and obvious error by the referee, blah, blah, blah. I just thought if that's what penalties are given for nowadays, we're in trouble. We're in real trouble, because it means people will just, be so terrified of making any sort of challenge in the box, either an open play or from corners or free kicks. It'll kill the game from that side of things, and I really don't like it. But as we know, Watkins puts it over the bar. It was so strange, didn't it? He lost his footing. Did Beckham do that once? I'm sure I've seen that penalty before. I think it was Beckham, but there's been one like it in the past. And as I say, I wasn't disappointed.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so not disappointed to see Watkins miss. And it gives Celtic a lift. And let's bring it back to that stage in the game. So you're only 3-2 down, and you're always in the game at that stage. And then Celtic, have made some changes. So Bernardo and Palmer come in the 73rd minute for Engels and Yang. I thought it was another good performance by Engels and a physical performance. He should have taken out John McGinn for the yellow. He learned from that as well. I'm sure they'll do the analysis and he'll learn that. But he's a physical guy. He's strong and powerful, and I think he's been pretty impressive over the 8 games, I've got to say. And then later in the game, they bring on Maatsen, actually, the fullback. He comes on for Digne. And you then hear that Maatsen played in the final last year for Dortmund. Talented player, and they bring on Maatsen and we bring on Palmer, if you want to look at it like that and be harsh about it. And then in addition, you've got Daniel Cummins comes in the 79th minute for Adam Idah, who's ran his race and had a brilliant night at the office from a personal point of view. Daniel Cummins comes in, and then just a few minutes later, Dane Murray comes in, as does Luke McCowan. Now, I'd be really keen to hear your thoughts on the fact that so many people are saying they shouldn't have been involved at all. That was criminal. Why involve them? And I know it was a steep learning curve and it ended up being a harsh night for Dane Murray. I think if you'd ask Dane Murray and Daniel Cummins 100 times out of 100, do you want to come on or not in this high-pressure game, they'd be all over it. That's a dream for a young footballer, to come on and play a part in such an environment. And I think there's others saying, well, why don't we bring them on when we're 5-0 up in the league against Ross County and bring them on against Wraith Rovers in the Cup, when we play in the Scottish in a week or two's time. All those things have got their part to play, but I just think these guys, it was a case of needs must last night. You had to bring them in and give them the chance in that environment. And I think Celtic didn't really have many choices. There's a situation there where players were tired, the squad was thin, and you had to bring them on. And I just think it's part of football. And as I say, the last people that would be arguing about it would be the players themselves. But what do you think of their inclusion on the night?
Yeah, sorry again, Tino, and the listeners, just that slightly the reception's not great, so just coming back in there. But in terms of what you were saying and the parts that I caught there, the drop off, who we had to bring in compared to them is absolutely night and day. And it was I felt sorry for the young guys coming into that and having to play their part. I felt really sorry for Dane Murray. I've seen him a few times, thought he's a decent player, makes a poor mistake, but we touched upon it. Ollie Watkins is an absolute top player, and he'll learn from that, and he's just so quick. I actually thought Dean Murray almost looked so relaxed. I thought he came on and looked really calm, and it's almost to his detriment that he makes that mistake. I think in terms of the subs, one part, I know you're not going to like this, I actually thought there was a role for Luke McGowan last night in terms of actually starting the game, possibly left-hand side instead of Yang. I thought he came on and done quite well, looked quite comfortable in the ball. But in terms of our subs, I think it showed you that's where my frustration lies today, Tino, that I keep on talking about, is that there was an opportunity there, and with what we had coming off the bench, it just didn't allow us to progress and actually go for the game. As I say, 3-2, I didn't really see us scoring. Bernardo, probably one of note that comes off the bench along with McGowan. Even with Bernardo, though, he just seems slightly out of form from where he was a couple of months ago, which is a bit frustrating. He had a chance out wide right of getting the ball in a wee bit sooner across the face of the box and didn't take it. So maybe just a wee bit short of confidence or fitness. But there was a huge drop-off in terms of when we had to bring players into the game, which was really frustrating.
What I've got to disagree with from quite a lot of the comments is the suggestion that Brendan Rodgers put Daniel Cummins and Dane Murray on to send a message to the board. I think at 3-2 down against Aston Villa, Brendan Rodgers' only thoughts are how can we possibly get something out of this game. I know he'll have his discussions. I actually think Brendan Rodgers and the board are in a decent place, and he doesn't need to send messages during the game. He just needs to go and chat Michael Nicholson's door and have an adult conversation about it. I think they're in a good place there, and that's not a concern for me. But I think everyone can see the evidence that, to your general point, Greg, the bench was light, whether it was the kids or Palmer or anybody else. Yeah. And I think that obviously kind of led to how the game finished up. But I don't think it's any sort of underhand cloak and dagger messaging by the manager. It seems I
don't think it is. I don't buy into that at all. I think it was just where we are as a club in terms of suspensions and what people leaving the club. I don't think it was cloak and daggers. I know Rodgers has done that previously, but I don't think last night was one of those opportunities to have a go at the board. And I would tend to agree with you, Tino. I think there's a good relationship there. As I alluded to earlier in the show, though, I'm just a wee bit tentative in terms of, and a wee bit nervous that we're at Thursday, Tuesday. We do need bodies in certain positions, and I'll go back to my previous point. It's surprising that we did let those two players go. I will not wait for the final Champions League game. So yeah, I don't think it's a game with the board, but it definitely has left us light.
Yeah, I think it's a situation Celtic need to resolve in the next couple of days. We need to get a striker and a left back, absolutely. And hopefully we can do that. But regardless whether we do or not, I don't think Brendan Rodgers is going to run the risk of not getting something at a Champions League game down south. He always wants to prove a point to his detractors in England. There's no way he risks that just to say, look what I'm having to do here by bringing on, Dane Murray or Daniel Cummins. I really don't think that was the case. What we do have going on, though, Greg, in the bigger picture, as I say, there's 4 key players that were missing out the squad: Kyogo, Maeda, CCV and Baye. 2 of them are gone, so they won't be back. But for the next game, all going well, CCV will return. It looks like Maeda misses out the first leg because his suspension's 2 games rather than the 1 game. But getting into that next tie in general, you'll have CCV for both games, Maeda for 1. Jota, and what a boost that is. And potentially another striker and another left back. You can add 3 players to your squad, I believe. And I think Celtic have got to just look optimistically. I don't know if anybody, even the most optimist amongst us, would predict that we're going to beat Madrid or Bayern Munich. To put up a performance and a battle against them would be, I think, the least you can ask for, and you never know. But I think what we can see, generally speaking, in this bigger picture, Greg, is progress. And that's what Brendan Rodgers said he would give us. And you can look at the curve since he came in. We got a win and a draw in last season's Champions League. We beat Feyenoord in the final game, and we drew with Atletico Madrid to give us 4 points, but you don't qualify. This time around, we pick up 12 points out of the 8 games, and you do progress. It's just there in black and white. And I just cannot believe anyone saying, oh, we should have beat Zagreb, we could have done this, we could have done that. It'd have been nice to win them all, but you can't win them all. And I actually think Celtic have managed those 8 games really maturely, to use that term again. And there can be no doubt that we've made progress here.
No, you're absolutely right. And there is progress there. We have set out to do what was intended by the manager, the team, the club, and we've qualified for the knockout stages. I think people's frustration came last night when you saw the draw and you went, oh no, that's the worst possible draw we could have got. And I think that's when people get frustrated going, oh, what if we'd got a point here, or what if there'd been a stronger team at Villa last night? That's where people's frustration, I think, is manifesting from. I get it, kind of, but at the same time, let's just appreciate it for what it is. I would much rather have had a favourable draw. And with another point or two, you would have had that. But as I said to you on the show, it's so fluid. That table was changing every 10 minutes. You can't comprehend for those kind of things. And you can't plan out who you're going to play. That's probably the excitement and the joy of this kind of new system, is that it is so dynamic and you don't know who you're playing up until the very last kick of a ball. So I think we've got to look at the bigger picture, and qualification was what we set out to do. And we discussed it last week. I think they've plotted their way through the group stages very maturely, and I think you saw last night, again, sticking in the theme of a mature Celtic side last night, I think goes to the wall, and we lose that game convincingly. But to have the character and mentality to come back from 2-0 down after 5 minutes in a really hostile environment, I think the manager and the players deserve enormous credit. And to your point, yes, I think if we can add 3 players, it would be fantastic. I've got everything crossed that does happen, because we do need it. We'll miss Maeda massively for the first leg, but it'll be good to have people like Vickers back. He was a real loss last night for me, massive loss.
Yeah, it seems you've got everything crossed, including your Wi-Fi cabling. So that's how that's all going. There's some really positive comments coming in, which is great to see. And I'll go to Tommy Dawson's one at the moment. Progress in Europe, lots of funds in the bank, building a squad for qualifying rounds next season. Great work so far. Tommy's absolutely spot on there. And a further one here from Colin Rodgers. He says, maybe controversial, and I don't think it is. He says, Brendan strikes me as someone who really cares about his players, even if it's to the detriment of Celtic. I just think Brendan Rodgers is very much a player's manager. You see how much guys like Kieran Tierney loved him first time around. He's just that guy, he got the best out of Bruni. Callum McGregor loves him. I think he's a player's dream. He's the kind of guy that just taps into the most important things to the individuals. I don't think it's to the detriment of Celtic either, by the way. I think you can do both. You can love your players and love Celtic and want the best for both. And I think that's what Brendan Rodgers is absolutely trying to do. And I think if we're going to stay on the positive train here, let's do so, because there is very little in the bigger picture to moan about. Some people will find it, and that's fine. That's up to them. And yeah, it'd have been nice to finish further up the table. But the way that system was going, Greg, as you say, very fluid. So what did we eventually finish in, 21st or something? You could have finished 13th and still got a Man City or a PSG or something like that. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to get too upset about that. At one point last night, I think we were playing PSV, and then it was going to be Juve, and now it's going to be Bayern Munich or Real Madrid. Whatever it is, you're not going to come up against any mugs at this level. It just turns out we've got two of the biggest sides around, and people want to panic about that. Let's just enjoy it. Go and embrace it. The games will take place over the next kind of 2-3 weeks, and that's what we're here for. And actually, Rodgers' own words were that this is a reward to the players. This is a reward for the maturity and going getting draws at Atalanta and playing out draws against Bruges, which aren't much fun, but sometimes you need to do it. And I think the players, as much as anybody, Greg, will be absolutely buzzing for these games, and it just keeps the momentum in your season as well.
Yeah, you're right. I'm just laughing there when you're saying that's a reward. I did have a slight chuckle at that when I looked and thought, well, that's your reward. You get Bayern Munich or Real Madrid. I think we'd all have rallied to other teams, but I get it. And I'm looking at the table. We finish above Man City by a point, which is incredible, and we sit alongside Juventus in the table. So that's the kind of calibre of teams that you're up against. And we've spoke about this in the show for a couple of weeks. We want to be at a level we're competing. Club Brugge, for me, were a really good side. We competed with them. There's other teams in there. Atalanta, excellent side. Villa, excellent side. We've competed all the way through. The only game you've not competed in is Dortmund. Bit of a freak game. You learn from it and you move on. But we want to build a squad that you are comfortable in that environment. You're comfortable playing and you're competing with most of the sides in it. And I think you alluded to it in one of the shows last week. We're not a million miles off that. And I would just hate to think that, yeah, we're in a good position domestically. We've got a really difficult knockout tie. But I just think this next few days for the scouting department, the Celtic Park, to do their job and just get some players over the line, because as you said as well, the knockouts are going to come very, very quickly at the other side for us in terms of qualifying. So yeah, it's a very important stage, and we're just so close to having a really, really good side.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And there's no doubt, everyone can see that you're building, and players come and go. You lose a Kyogo who's been so important. we'll bring in the next hero, and that's how you've got to always be building. Good point made by Colin Rodgers. I was talking about, the advantage or not of finishing higher up the table. The big advantage, of course, if you do finish the top half of between places 9 and 24, you do get your last game, your second game at home. Celtic will play the first game at Celtic Park, which will be an incredible night in itself, atmosphere-wise, but you then need to go to a Madrid or a Munich and potentially have to get a big result there. So that is the challenge. And there are detractors, Greg, that want to talk down Celtic's opponents. We obviously got I'd say a favourable draw. It's fair to say that in terms of the 8 opponents. But you've got some real quality in there. Atalanta, Europa League holders, Dortmund, Champions League finalists, Villa, showing all their quality last night. And 4 of our 8 opponents qualify. And I think is it Zagreb that were just on the cusp. I think they came 25th. So, young boys in Slovan were poor. The other teams are all a challenge in their own right. And again, credit to Celtic for navigating that.
Yeah, you're always going to get that narrative, aren't you, that it was an easy draw, we just qualified by a point, etc., etc. I think you mentioned to me earlier, did you see some of the socials flying about today? I just tend to avoid it because most of it's utter nonsense, to be honest. But favourable draw or not, there's still a lot of quality in these sides. You even look at young boys last week, I thought they had some really, really good players. And in the second half, looked a decent outfit. But at this level, you're always going to come across quality. And we've played some really good teams. And the key word for me is we've competed. And in previous years, we've not done that. So it's refreshing. We've qualified. We need to see the positives, as frustrating as it may be. And some fans are frustrated. I kind of get it. But let's see the bigger picture here. And we look forward. As I say, I'd rather not have that draw. But we accept it and we move on and try and enjoy the occasion, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about who you get after you beat Madrid or Munich, because that'll be really tough, whoever you get in the round beyond that. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Greg, as we start to wrap up, let me ask you one key question and then get your final thoughts. Who would you prefer out of Madrid or Munich? And what are your final thoughts as Celtic make their way through to the playoff round?
Munich. I would rather Munich, without doubt. I went to the Allianz last time over in Munich. It was an incredible experience going over there a couple of years ago. I'd rather Munich. I think the Real Madrid starting lineup's absolutely frightening, to be honest. So, yeah, I'd definitely Bayern Munich. Not saying it's an easier tie. They're both really difficult, but it's a lesser of two evils for me. Final thoughts, I say. I really enjoyed the game last night. I cut a frustrated figure today, not only because of my dodgy Wi-Fi, but just we're on the cusp of just that extra wee step, and it's going to take some extra players coming in. On that note, I'm absolutely buzzing for Jota to be back. My wee girls Eva and Sorsha are massive fans, and the Jota and the Wings song's been playing in the house all week, so they're absolutely buzzing to see him back in the hoops, and that's kind of cheered me up today in the back end of a disappointing result. But I think you have to note a lot of plaudits from down south as well for Celtic. A lot of the media was really, really positive after being quite dismissive of Rodgers and Celtic. I read a lot of positive things today, which was quite refreshing. So, yeah, got to see the positive side of it and looking forward to the game at Motherwell.
Yeah, and I think, being competitive was the most important thing last night. It's always disappointing whenever Celtic lose a game, and it's not often we lose games of football. But if you're going to lose games, there's ways to lose. There's manners in which to lose games of football. Dortmund wasn't the way to lose a game of football, but I would argue that last night was, if you have to lose, of course. But that aside, there is so much to look forward to, Greg. We've got European football going into February, which isn't very like us, generally speaking. You've got a returning hero in the shape of Jota. You're potentially going to make 2 big signings before the window closes on Monday. You've got the League Cup in the bag. You're 10 points to the good in the league. I think, generally speaking, the sun is shining in terms of all things Celtic, and lots to enjoy there. Thanks, as always, to everyone that continues to join us live. Some great comments coming through. Some myself and Greg will agree with, some we won't, but that's not what it's about. It's all about having that debate and everyone getting their own opinions across. And as always, we really appreciate it. Thanks to everyone who continues to support us there. Remember, if you listen to the Celtic Exchange podcast and want to support us further in the year ahead, as well as enjoy ad-free listening and early access to the weekly show, visit the celticexchange.supercast.com. There is a link in the show notes for that. But in the meantime, let me see where we're at. We're on Thursday night. We've just done the Villa review, Greg. We've got a game on Sunday against managerless Motherwell at Fir Park. We'll be back on Friday, probably Friday night. We'll confirm the times on the socials. We'll do the pre-match for that one. So in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Myself and Greg will see you all again very soon.